As the leader of the Booner Pack, I lead from the front.
All right, boys. Lock in.
It's our core foundation, man. Grit.
I'm fired up. I'm fired the f*** up, boys.
It's pumping right now. It's got my juices pumping, boys.
Welcome to Crunch Time Sports with Jeff Iafrate. No Booner today. He is still under the weather with either, food poisoning, stomach flu. A lot of things going around right now, and Boone is still out. So feel better, my friend. He'll be back tomorrow. So take the time. He needs all the time. I mean, it's been a long football season, or I guess not as long as we'd like, but Booner, rest up. We need you for tomorrow. Is out tonight. Booner ruled out. Not a healthy scratch, ruled out. On IR. I guess not IR, but out for the game. Another game. Expected to return tomorrow. But we have a lot to get to today. It's going to be a great show. Scott Bischoff, who is basically one of the brightest draft minds here in Detroit, is going to join the show. And 8:30, we're going to get to talk to Scott. He's going to voice his opinion on the Drew Petzing hire. On top of that, we're going to go through some prospects in the NFL draft that Scott likes, good fits for the Detroit Lions. I'm going to talk to another Arizona Cardinals writer because, we talked to Donnie 2 days ago, but we're going to get to talk to another one, Kyler Burd, another friend of the show, and kind of get his thoughts and see if we can, poach more people from Arizona to get some insight on Drew Petzing, the new Lions OC. And then in the second hour, I guess the start of the second hour, Flannel Sam will be joining the show. So he'll be hanging out with us as well. So a lot of guests, a lot of topics to get to. Hopefully you guys are having a great night. Before we begin the show, hit the like button on the stream. Much appreciated. Subscribe if you haven't already. I see you in there. We got Vincent. Donkey Kong's in there. Shout out Jay as well. Cripple Boy. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Shout out Gentry is in there as well. Check them out on Saturdays. The fellas have been killing it. Hopscotch. Appreciate you as well. We got John in here. Shift God. Like I said, a lot to get to. Platonic Zombie says, so far every mock draft I've seen doesn't list safety as a need, but we have no idea what's up with Kirby. We don't know what to expect from Branch. How is safety not a need? It's a good point. I'll say this. I really like Thomas Harper. I think Thomas Harper is a very good backup safety, but they have to address that position. You're not going to look me in the eyes and tell me that Dan Jackson is the savior, who they drafted late, I think 7th round last year and was out all season due to injury. Go draft a safety, draft another one. It's not even about the uncertainty of both those safeties. If you just look at contractually with Brian Branch, you don't even know if you're going to extend him. So it's not even just this year. It's beyond this year. That safety position, definitely in question. I would argue linebacker, safety. You can argue different positions. What happens with David Montgomery? I hope he stays. But if not, do you have to go get a running back in the draft? Do you get one I don't know. I hope he stays. I mean, I really hope that that's not a position you're looking at. Maybe the Drew Petzing hire changes some things. Monty, Drew Petzing loves to run the ball, so stick around, please. Steve-O, he's in here as well. What's up, Steve? What's going on, man? He says, Jeff, your thoughts on Dan Skipper retiring? Well, it's funny you say that, Steve, because I got it pulled up. So Dan Skipper put this out. Let's read. All right, put it on his Instagram. Used a Macklemore song. Respect, Dan Skipper. He put out 24 years of putting on pads and a helmet every fall. This year, I'll trade that out to pursue a career on the other side in coaching. The memories and experiences that the NFL has brought me and my family are hard to put into words. Thankful for every person that has been a part of my journey. It's time for me to report as retired. Sorry, I had to do it one last time. Respect to Dan Skipper. And he hinted at this. He hinted at this at the end of the season when it was kind of already known at that point that we're going to make the playoffs. It was after the Bears game. They won. Taylor Decker had an emotional media scrum in the locker room, but no one really talked about Dan Skipper's. I mean, Dan Skipper's media scrum after the game was just as, kind of confusing. Like you didn't really know. Not confusing is the wrong word. It was open-ended, I guess. He would lean more towards retiring, and you kind of got that from what he was talking about. Graham, I think, on the other hand, I believe he mentioned that he's still under contract. So he was like, "Oh, I'm still under contract." So I think that was more, okay, he's probably coming back. But Dan Skipper does not surprise me that he retired today. I think the reality of it, and I posted a video which you guys can go check out, and I talked more in depth about it. But my takeaway from it, Giovanni Manu. Okay. This is someone that I have had my fair share of praise for, given the measurables when he was drafted. Now that we are, 2 years into his career, I think we can evaluate Giovanni Manu pretty fairly. You can still say there's more work to do. I would argue there's a lot of work to do, but Giovanni Manu is somebody that's kind of been, I guess, being groomed to be the next Dan Skipper. That was assumed that was going to be his role this year. I thought you were hoping for, and he started in one game without Taylor Decker, and he got manhandled by Trey Hendrickson, and Jared Goff almost died. So the Lions learned quickly, okay, he is not ready, and then he got hurt, and that was kind of the end of that. So Dan Skipper is somebody, and I just want to give him his praise for a second. All love, all respect, everything for Dan Skipper. That guy is one of the toughest SOBs on the Lions. Playing through all those injuries, playing through the knee injury, I believe that was reported that was kind of still lingering. Like one of his knees is significantly weaker than the other knee. I mean, the guy's just playing with a ton of injuries. I mean, I know we bring up Taylor Decker, but Dan Skipper doesn't get all the media attention, but he is someone that has been dealing with a ton of injuries. And he still goes out there, buckles up the bootstraps, goes to work, and leaves it all on the line. And they used him in different positions. They used him as basically an extra tight end or an extra offensive lineman as a tight end when they wanted to go jumbo. He played left and right tackle for you, started at guard for you. He started at 3 different positions for the Detroit Lions in his tenure, and was somebody that, he wasn't the most talented offensive lineman, but guess what? He held his own at times, and he is, to me, however you want to classify, a diamond in the rough, because no one thought you were getting anything from Dan Skipper. Let's be real here. I mean, he overachieved in his career, and I mean that respectfully. Like, you didn't think he would start in a game, in some games, and you'd be like, wow, Dan Skipper held his own today. Like, I mean, the guy is 6'10". He's a massive dude, and he held it down for the Detroit Lions. So he had a nice career with the Lions, a shorter career, but still, hell of a job, Dan Skipper. Nothing but love to you, my friend. So good luck in your next career with coaching. I wonder if the Lions are kind of a team that would give him an opportunity there, just to come in and be like an assistant coach to maybe like a Hank Fraley, but we'll see. But a lot of respect to Dan Skipper. But I think, like I was saying about Giovanni Manu, it kind of puts into perspective the future of this offensive line, right? I mean, you have Taylor Decker, who's contemplating retirement. You have Dan Skipper, who just retired, Graham Glasgow, who is probably close to retiring, if not plays like he is retired, all due respect. There's a lot of question marks on this O-line. There's a lot of question marks at tackle. That's another reality. Because if Dan Skipper and Taylor Decker retire, Penei Sewell's sitting there by himself looking around going, where is everybody? I'm the only tackle here. All right. So I think we can look at this Taylor Decker situation and all collectively agree that it's probably best for the Lions and for Taylor Decker, his health, his career, his at-home life, that he retires. The Lions save money, and you have more money to play with. That would save I don't know the exact amount. It's like $14-15 million, whatever I could be wrong on that, but it's a general number. They would save money if he retires, and the Lions can utilize some of that cash to go out and upgrade their roster. You may have a situation where you have a rookie left tackle, or in my opinion, rookie right tackle, because Penei Sewell should be playing left tackle for you going into the season. You probably sign a veteran center to come in and play for Graham. Graham becomes either a guard for you or backup offensive lineman, and you roll out with who you got. I mean, Brad's got a tall task, man. This offensive line room is old. I mean, there's a couple guys that are old. They got younger, but your tackles besides, Penei are all basically retiring. And you have a center who played for you, started as many games as he was healthy, and he might retire soon. So some of these older guys, Frank Ragnow wasn't old, but he retired. It's kind of the new guard for the offensive line. Penei Sewell said it. He's losing all his vets. So you kind of need Tate Ratledge to take a massive step, which I think he will. Christian Mahogany, we need to, I don't really know. I don't think he should be given a starting job, in my opinion. People may disagree with that, but I didn't think his play was up to the level to where you say starter. He still has a lot to prove, and then we'll see what happens at tackle. But yeah, I got a lot of love for Dan Skipper, but it just kind of puts into, it kind of reminds people, in my opinion, how serious this offensive line issue is. Okay, it's a massive issue, and if it's not addressed, you got a whole bunch of problems coming your way, and it has nothing to do with Drew Petzing. I'll tell you that. So he'll be the last of our worries if you can't put together a good offensive line this year. Just being real. John Unitas says, get the Cardinal center or the free agent center from the Colts, cheap but reliable if we can't afford Linderbaum. Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens with Linderbaum. Watch the Giants try and go sign him. Who knows? Now that John Harbaugh's over there, but he might stay with the Ravens. I don't really know. He's going to cost a pretty penny. Now the Lions can free up some money, but Brad said it in his press conference. They want to re-sign their guys like Brad has been doing. So I don't know what that means when it comes to like how many of the guys they want to re-sign. I just don't see how you're able to re-sign Sam Laporta, Brian Branch, Jack Campbell, Jahmyr Gibbs. I don't know how. Okay, those guys are all going to command pretty top dollar. And on top of that, two of them are dealing with pretty serious injuries. So I don't think you should make any moves. But even Jack and Jahmyr are going to cost probably in the $40 million range a year. So we'll see how that kind of shapes up. But yeah, they're going to have to go get a center. You can restructure Goff. Taylor Decker retires. You could probably go get, like you said, a cheap but reliable center, but not cheap to where you're signing another Graham Glasgow. You're going to have to pay for someone that's a starter. That's not a bad player because that player is going to have a market. Every team could use offensive line help. I mean, it's one of the more important positions in football, quite frankly, important position groups. Purple Prince, he says, Linderbaum is going to be so expensive and the whole league will want him. True. What makes you think Brad would spend what it costs to get him? True. They're not going to get Tyler Linderbaum. Okay. There's two different discussions here. There's want and what I think will happen. I want them to sign Tyler Linderbaum. Do I think they will? No, I don't. I don't see Brad Holmes going from wondering what the definition of aggressive is when asked about it, and then going out and paying Tyler Linderbaum what he deserves. I don't see that. So I am with you, Purple Prince. I don't think they're going to sign Tyler Linderbaum. So it's, in my opinion, it's about time we start thinking of other options here. Okay. Because it's not going to be Tyler Linderbaum. It's going to be probably like the Bills center. I don't know, the Colts center, the Cardinals trade for the Cardinals center, whatever they want to do. It's not going to be the move that we all think it is. That's usually how this goes, right? I mean, there's a move and we all think it's going to happen. And then something else happens. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's what happens. So Tyler Linderbaum is the move everyone wants. It's not going to happen. Okay. It's not going to happen. I do want to have a Brad Holmes conversation today. We'll have it in a couple of minutes because I want to get into it because I saw today John Schneider from the Seahawks. Shout out to him. John Schneider was voted Executive of the Year by the Pro Football Writers of America, which, for those who don't know, Brad Holmes has, I think, won that back-to-back. So he had some crazy years to start, for sure. No one's arguing that. No one can take that away from Brad Holmes. He's actually the only Lions executive to win that award since it was first established in 1993. He's also the first Black executive to win it. And I think it was 2023 to 2024. So, or 2023 and 2024. I think he won it then. I could be wrong. It was in consecutive years that Brad Holmes won that award. So and John Schneider, by the way, like, I don't think anyone would disagree. John Schneider deserves the award. I mean, the Seahawks, the year they had with who they have at quarterback, like, Mike McDonald should be considered for coach of the year. I mean, what they did with Sam Darnold in that defense and JSN and a run game that's been dealing with injuries, and an offensive line that's been, they've built all of that through the draft, through free agency. So John Schneider won it. And I want to have a discussion with you guys. And the discussion basically is, what does Brad Holmes have to do to have an Executive of the Year offseason? All right. And again, it's not just about winning the award. Brad won it twice. But offseason, what does Brad need to do to have an Executive of the Year offseason? That's the question. And I think what I found doing research through kind of comparing what the Seahawks have done over the last couple of years to what the Lions have done the last couple of years. I think and here's that graphic, by the way. Seahawks GM John Schneider has been voted Executive of the Year by Pro Football Writers of America. It's the first Executive of the Year award in Schneider's career, which is crazy. John Schneider's a really good GM. He's a really good. We had a discussion earlier this year. I think it was earlier this year. It was the offseason, or not earlier this year. Excuse me, earlier last year. Top 5 GMs, and I had John Schneider in my top 5. Like I did, and I still believe he is. I think he's a very good GM. Look at his draft. He's been in Seattle for a while. He's built really good rosters. He's built rosters, tore them down, and rebuilt rosters. So John Schneider's won a Super Bowl. Very good GM. And he won the Executive of the Year award. So, like I was saying, what does Brad need to do to have an Executive of the Year offseason? Well, it starts, to me, in the draft. You guys want to know something? Seattle, the last 2 years, okay, in their draft, just look at their draft classes. Because before the last 2 years, I'm not just using that to fit my narrative. We could go back 3 years and look at the draft class in 2023 for the Seahawks and see they drafted Witherspoon and JSN in the first round, Zach Charbonnet. Like, we can go back and look at that draft class, but it doesn't. I'm only going the last 2 years because that's how it compares to the Lions, because the Lions in 2023 had an excellent draft class. So it's really just about the last 2 years, because that's really what matters. I mean, you have 2 draft classes. It could set you back. It could hurt you. And the last 2 years, the Seahawks have had really impactful players from their draft classes. So for Brad to kind of get back into that Executive of the Year conversation, not that I really care about winning the award, but being looked at as a very, very good GM, is what he does in the draft. Now let's look at some of these. Drafts. Okay, so let me pull this up. Okay, Seattle. This year they had a first-round pick and 2 second-round picks, third-round pick, and they had a bunch of 5th and 7th, and But let's look at their first couple picks. In 2025, the Seahawks drafted Gray Zabel, okay, at 18, and we know Gray Zabel's a really good player on the offensive line. They drafted Nick Imanowori, and he's a really good safety. He had a really good year this year, 2.5 sacks and an interception. He's a stud. They drafted Elijah Araro, who is the tight end out of Miami, I think it is, and Torrey Horton, wide receiver, those 4 guys have all been contributing in some fashion year one on a team that's playing to get into the Super Bowl. Riley Mills, defensive lineman in the 5th round. He hasn't really played much. Lucas really liked Riley Mills. Jalen Milroe, he's obviously just a guy they're developing. Then you go back to 2024, Byron Murphy at 16, Christian Haynes in the 3rd round. He hasn't really played. Tyrese Knight in the 4th round. He's been a player that's been contributing for them. And then AJ Barner. Let me see. AJ Barner, tight end out of Michigan. He's been contributing for them. So the last 2 drafts, they've had probably minimum 3 guys that are contributing. Okay. So that's what I'm looking at when I'm looking at what the Seahawks have done the last 2 years. People hate when I compare the Eagles. So I'll just look at the Seahawks. All right, let's just look at the Seahawks. I'm not looking at their success. I'm just looking at the draft classes, why they're here, why they're playing for a chance to get in the Super Bowl, like the Lions did years ago. And guess what the Lions did years ago when they were playing in the championship game? They were drafting really well, and they had these types of draft where they had 3 guys contributing. And I'm not saying – I know the roster's really good, so it's hard for guys to come in and contribute right away. But look at the Seahawks, man. Like the Seahawks, they're a really good roster. All right. And they drafted guys that came in and are at least contributing in some fashion. So the draft is what set this team. The draft is what hurt this team the last 2 years. Now, this year for Detroit, you have Tyleek, Tate Ratledge, Isaac Tesla, Miles Frazier, Ahmed Hassanin, Dan Jackson, Dominic Lovett. A couple of these guys we don't really know. So I'm not going to write guys off already, but it hasn't really been great first years for anyone but Isaac Tesla. Tate Ratledge showed some things this year, but he's been up and down. We're still kind of figuring out what that looks like. Isaac Tesla, he's really good. That's a hit. Miles Frazier, we don't really know. Ahmed, we like to see more of Ahmed. He's a developmental player. Dan Jackson and love it. 7th round picks, we'll see. Tyleik Williams, didn't really love a lot of what I saw to Tyleik Williams. He was getting beat out by a guy who was a free agent and Roy Lopez. And I got a lot of love for Roy Lopez, but, first round pick from Tyleik out of OSU. I mean, that's a tough look. And then the year prior, Taron Arnold, we still don't know really if he's really good or not. He showed some things this year, got hurt. And it's Drake Straw, nope. Giovanni Manu, nope. Sione Vaki, nope. Makai Wingo, nope. And Christian Mahogany, who's been starting, hasn't been as good as you like. So that's where the biggest difference is. So, like I said, if Holmes is going to get back to that executive of the year type of offseason, it starts in April. It starts in the draft. It starts in the first round. Get an impactful player. Get a player who's going to contribute right away and make plays for you, whether it's in the trenches or anywhere else right away. Brad can draft, okay? I know it doesn't seem that way because he's been taking a lot of chances, but I'm not going to say the guy can't draft. For whatever reason, he's just had 2 bad drafts, okay? So that obviously hurts that narrative. Or 1 bad draft and 1 that's kind of incomplete. Fine, I'll give you that. So the guy has it in him, okay? So this year, impactful player in the first round, second round, or do you trade back and get another pick? Whatever it is, your first 3 rounds, you got to find guys that can contribute. Whether it's a left tackle, an edge, a center, whatever it is, someone that can come in, and I'm not saying they got to be a Hall of Famer year 1 and just play like Penei Sewell, but at least someone that shows a lot of promise. Someone that you can look at and be like, that guy has potential. I don't think Gray Zabel was perfect this year, but they know that guy's a stud. Byron Murphy. I don't think he looked, lights out year 1, but that guy's a stud. You kind of knew it. He's got 7.5 sacks this year. Byron Murphy, their defensive tackle that they drafted last year or the year prior. Oh, yeah, by the way, 7.5 sacks for a position that people keep telling me isn't really stat-driven. Yeah, that same position. Because Aleem McNeil will get 3 sacks, and everyone keeps telling me, well, it's a position you can't really measure statistically. But then there's Byron Murphy over in Seattle that has 7.5 sacks as a defensive tackle. So we got to be – he's playing the same position as Aleem, guys. All right? I'm not just using this year. I'm using Aleem's career. We got I keep getting told it's not a stat-driven position, but what do I know? So that's where it starts, guys. It starts in the draft. It starts in the draft. And then it goes to the free agency, which, actually for those who don't remember, Brad a couple years ago had, a more active free agency period. That's when he drafted TA and, they traded for Carlton Davis. What else did they do that offseason? I know they traded for Kevin Zeitler, excuse me. So they acquired Carlton Davis, Kevin Zeitler. You drafted TA. So at the time, you're like, well, we got a first-round corner. Hindsight, obviously, he hasn't panned out quite how you expected. But at the time, you're like, wow, he's really trying to fill holes here and fix things on this roster. That's the type of offseason you got to have. Kevin Zeitler needs to be a center in this version. You got to go sign a center. And then Carlton Davis might have to be a linebacker. So it's going to have to be that type of offseason. Obviously, everybody ended up getting hurt, but you saw the intention there with Brad Holmes. So that's what it really has to be. I mean, I'm not saying the guy's got to sign a whole new roster, but you got to go address those positions. I mean, you can't sit here, and suck your thumb and be like, all right, we're just going to draft a tackle and draft a center and roll into the offseason or roll into the season with 2 rookies and Christian Mahogany and Tay Radledge. Can't do it, man. I think Dan said it best. They want competition. They want guys that will come in and compete. And if you want that, you got to add to positions that you already have, right? You got to add another safety, like the commenter pointed out. You got to add another linebacker, right? You got to add, whatever, maybe a running back at some point. I don't give a damn, something. No more Davenport. Okay, I see that. We got Davenport that offseason. I was like opening up Cole on Christmas, getting Davenport. I mean, I didn't even count that as a transaction, to be honest with you, with all due respect. Nagy says stupid to let Zeitler walk. Okay, so This is where I'm at with that. I don't think they wanted to. I don't think they wanted to let Zeitler walk. I think Zeitler had personal reasons why he went to Nashville. I don't think you'd want to go to a team that sucked that bad if it wasn't for personal reasons. I think it was reported he's close with the offensive line coach and he lives there. So I think he's going to probably retire. I will at least try and defend that move. I'll try and defend that move. Now, if there is a report that they just did not want to, re-sign him and he wanted to come back, yeah, then we have a whole nother thing. We do. I will tell you that. By the way, I did see some comments I want to get to. Streams only. Exactly, Jeff. Playmakers can exist at D-tackle. They try to pump up a lean by saying that stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's true. Dom, he says, Jeff, the Seahawks always had the roster. They were going to the playoffs with Geno. They made the bold call at upgrade at quarterback. That's exactly the Lions situation. Geno and Goff don't fit the modern game. Okay. All right. Guys, or Dom, I shouldn't say guys. Dom, you can't look me in the eyes and tell me that Sam Darnold is better than Jared Goff. You just can't. I refuse to believe it. I refuse to acknowledge it. It's ridiculous. Sam Darnold is a fine quarterback. Okay. He can move. So if you want a guy that can move, then I don't know, go sign Justin Fields. All right. I don't know what to tell you. But Sam Darnold is not better than Jared Goff. That's not close to being true. Let's bring on someone that does have brains and someone that I want to speak to that would never say such a thing. Maybe he will, though. I don't know. Scott Bischoff, a good friend of mine, good friend of the show, does an excellent job and does work for Detroit Lions podcast. One of the brightest men in Detroit sports, at least to talk some draft, talk Drew Petzing. Him and Russ do an excellent job. You can check out their show. We talked to Russ yesterday, had a great conversation. Mr. Scott Bischoff. Scott, how we doing, my friend?
I'm well. How are you?
Good. Well, sorry about that. Commenters telling me Sam Darnold's better than Jared Goff. It just we're at this point of the offseason. It's yeah. Yeah, no, I'm with you, Scott. Let me get your thoughts. The last couple days have been a Drew Petzing every day, just talking about Drew Petzing. All right. And I've been talking to Cardinals writers, and I know Cardinals people are going to be biased. Okay. I understand that. I understand it. Just like if we had a coach that was fired, it's like Aubrey Pleasant in LA. I mean, if Rams fans asked us, we'd say he's terrible. They love him. So it's like, I understand the difference there. But when you first saw the news, it was reported who they interviewed. You saw the names that they had brought in, and you didn't know all of them, obviously. The Lions don't really release that stuff. But now that you've had a couple days to kind of think about it, what do you think about the Drew Petzing hire and the kind of fit there, Scott?
So it's the first thing, and it just continues. It lingers. Is it feels underwhelming, but not in a negative way. It just does. It feels like okay, I will. We're gonna. I guess I'll say this a few times, but I do think that some of the backlash and some of the stuff that we're hearing from the people who view this negatively are people who have lost a little bit of faith in Brad and Dan, and that's. And I mean, that's a very real thing, right? And it's understandable. So I would understand that if you didn't have faith in Dan and Brad, then you would take this kind of news and be like, oh, this blows. Same old shit, Yeah. I don't view it that way, right? I guess this is the process that I took to coming to where I am now, which is I looked at statistically what they had done over the past 3 seasons. Year one was a mess. Josh Dobbs played 8 games for them. Kyler Murray played 8 games for them in 2023. 2024, they got a full season from Murray. Everything seemed to go okay, right? They weren't prolific. They weren't explosive. They didn't do a lot of great things, but they ran the ball very effectively. And then this most recent season, Kyler Murray played 4 or 5 games, whatever it is, and Jacoby Brissett played the rest. But you also had James Conner breaking his leg in like week 4 or 5. You had Trey Benson, who they took in round 3 a few years ago, who tore his meniscus, and he just wasn't a part of things. Their leading rusher had like 333 yards total rushing on the season. they were out of script by the middle of the first quarter. They were already they're already throwing, right? So you get away from the things that the coordinator really wants to do just by the sense of what's happening in these games. So, jumping to the things that I like that he does do, it's formations and design. I think those things mesh. The puzzle pieces of the things he likes to do match really well with what Detroit wants to do on offense, right?
Right.
The 12 and personnel stuff. I think that he probably deploys more 12 personnel than what Detroit does, which is a bit of an indication that you're going to need one come draft time. Or free agency. You're going to need a guy you can rely on to be a solid blocker.
Mm-hmm.
I love the idea of putting Jared Goff under center. So the next group of things are going to be all things that if you've been paying attention to what the Lions like to do and where they've been at their best, which was 2 years ago when they were mashing people, right, on offense. It's Jared Goff under center, lots of play action, attacking the short to intermediate middle of the field, right? It's the efficiency of their ground game that gets them into good down and distance, which allows them to control games. And that word is probably the most important thing of the entire story, the entire Petzing story, is that he brings them the opportunity to control football games like they haven't been able to do in a little while. Certainly they didn't do it really at any point last year,
Right.
based on their base structural offense. But when you think about the way they want to run the ball, and just efficiency, let's just get first downs and just keep moving down the field. Pretty soon, it's all right. That's a 7 or 8 minute drive. We scored a touchdown. Other team hasn't had the ball yet. They go 3 and out. We're going to put together another 7 or 8 minute drive. And pretty soon it's halfway through the second quarter and you're up 14-0 and the other team has had the ball one time.
Yeah.
Right. So that there's a lot of Dan Campbell in that they want to just take complete control of things. So, I see all that stuff. And then I think about the efficiency of the way they run the ball with James Conner. And it's not that James Conner's a very, very good running back. He has been for a while, but he's not Jahmyr Gibbs, right? So if you're creating space through your scheme and the way you block things up to get Conner into fantasy running back 1 territory, that's all good. And it's efficiency and volume of their passing attack in the way they use their running backs too, because it's one of the things that they did with Conner is they threw him the ball a lot. He was very activated in their passing attack. So to me, those are all things that if you're a Lions fan, you're paying attention to the things that the Lions do really well. They all match, perfectly well with where the Lions are, or where the Lions, let's say it this way, where the Lions were at the end of, say, the 2024 season. Let's go there. When they were still playing that smash mouth, we're just going to run through you. We're going to run over you. We're going to control this game. You're not controlling things. We are, kind of stuff. So I think they're going to go back to that kind of stuff, that mentality. Some context around this is the Lions are already a top 5 offense.
Right.
Even in a down year where everybody thought it was a failure of a season, they still were, I want to say, tied for 3rd or 4th, maybe it was 4th, the highest scoring offense in the NFL in what everybody considered to be a failure of a season. So he's coming here and, of the 11 starters that you have on offense, my guess is I would say the Lions are better in like 9 of those 11 positions. You can have Trey McBride, right? I mean, Trey McBride's a stud, but in every other way, the Lions are better. So, I think those are really good things. But the bottom line, and this is where I think there's the Holmes Campbell not earning the trust of the fans, is that we are not going to know what play calling is like until play calling is happening.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like we don't know right now what he's going to be like as a play caller in Detroit with these guys, with these players, with Jared Goff as his quarterback. We have no idea. So we just have to assume. I suppose you could assume that it's going to be bad, or you can assume that it'll be okay, right? And I think with Dan Campbell on board, that's the thing is he was kind of alone in Arizona. It's not like he could go to Gannon and ask him what he thought about, offense, right? So if they're going to collaborate, I think the collaboration of those guys is really good. So, I like it. Is it a sexy move? It's underwhelming, right? But from the football technical stuff, it makes a ton of sense for where the Lions are and what they want to do, on a game in, game out basis. It just does.
I think it puts a lot of responsibility. I think we can talk about the coordinator, but it doesn't help if Brad Holmes doesn't address what needs to be addressed in April, in free agency, the offensive line.
But nothing would have helped. It wouldn't matter who you had. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So the offensive line is going to be a priority, obviously. I was talking about it today. Just kind of, I saw John Schneider won Executive of the Year, and Brad Holmes has already won the award. But my discussion was, what does Brad need to do to have that kind of Executive of the Year off season to get back? And it starts, in my opinion, in April to what they do in the draft. Obviously, the last two drafts for Brad. This past draft, you can't really grade it yet. There's still guys that could go either way. Ty Lee could turn into a really good player. But at least 2 years ago, underwhelming draft with Giovanni Manu, and a lot of those players. But looking at this draft, yeah, exactly. A lot of guys are dealing with injuries. But looking at this draft, I think what's interesting is, people are still going to bring up the edge stuff, which, it's just constantly a theme here. Obviously, the edge position, offensive line, tackle, what happens with Taylor Decker. Dan Skipper retires today. When you look at the first round of that pick 17, and you just look at the depth in this draft of tackles, I know we just watched one on Monday for Miami. That's a really good player. When you look at that 17th pick, if you're Brad Holmes, it's almost, in my opinion, you're in a position where you want to trade back because you want more draft capital. They only have a first and a second. They don't have a third. But then you're also looking at it, Scott, like you could have a guy fall, a blue chip top tackle prospect where you might just have to pull the trigger. It's a tough approach for Brad Holmes, it looks like, at that pick 17. I wonder what he's going to do this April with that.
It's, there's some tough stuff before that too. Like, what are you doing at center? Are you addressing the center? Because to me, my perspective is, in this particular class, if you draft a center, he's not playing this year.
Right.
They're just not ready. Right. So it's almost like you're going to go with what you have right now. And what you have right now is just not good enough. It's just not. So I think that you have to approach free agency in some ways, thinking about, how do we come out of this with a center that we can rely on? An NFL proven guy who's played in the NFL, who is an established guy. I'm not saying it has to be Linderbaum. It doesn't have to be. It'd be great if it was, but it doesn't have to be. There are other players that are going to be free agents who might be interesting. Cade Mays from Carolina.
Yep.
Is, and I don't know what Carolina's plans are from him, but he played pretty well for them this year. Matt Hennessy from San Francisco. These are kind of younger guys who might be able to make it work. Obviously, there's Linderbaum. Everybody knows Connor McGovern, those kind of things. But I wanted to bring up Cade Mays because he's interesting, right? And then there's there's a guard who this guy he's with the Chargers. He played guard, but he played tackle for them when Alt went out, and his name is Jamari Salyer. And he would be one of those, bring that guy in, and there are going to be moments when you need to play guard for us, and you might have to play tackle for us a little bit here or there, but we know you're capable of doing it. You just did it for a full season. So there's some things that they can do in free agency to make the stuff that happens in the draft a little more, I guess it would just be easier because you'd have some known knowns, right? Like there'd be some answers already for where you are. If you're entering the draft and you feel like you got the center position locked up and you've got Ratledge, you got Sewell, and then it's just trying to figure out what's going to happen at left guard, and you have competition there already. So really on offense, it's getting prepared for the retirement of Taylor Decker, whether that's now or in a year. To me, it doesn't matter when it is. You can't leave that thing whipping in the wind for a year and cross your fingers and hope that Taylor Decker doesn't get hurt. No, if he does, we don't have anybody. You know what I mean? They have to address that. So, but there's a variety of things that they're going to have to resolve. They're going to have to figure out before the draft. But yeah, I mean, pick 17 is going to be very interesting.
Yeah, it seems like at least there's, I mean, at least good for the Lions. You pick at 17, there's a lot of tackles coming out. You have the Utah tackles. You have the Miami tackle, who's a freak of an athlete and just a freak overall. Caden Proctor, Alabama, another tackle. When you're looking at this, is this one of those classes where it's kind of, at least looking at it, and I know we have a lot of time to dive more into like prospects. There's still plenty of time, but just kind of early thoughts. It feels like if you don't walk out with a tackle, like at 17 or at least around in the first round with all the guys that are going to be there, it feels like fans are always going to find a way to be upset. I get that. But without a tackle,
be upset if you took an edge.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, then it's like now people are like, shit. Okay. Now we wanted an edge, but we wanted to tackle.
Yeah.
Feels like that pick's going to lean tackle based on the talent, Scott.
I think so. And I think the circumstances in and around Decker forces you to have to do that. And they've talked about learning lessons from the Ragnow situation and not allowing that to be a problem going forward.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And there are there's a premium. In the end, Maui Goa is probably going to be he's probably going to be tackle one for everybody. I mean, if you run a heavy zone system, I think that maybe Spencer Fano from Utah could be tackle one, but let's just assume it's Maui Goa. And then after that, it's a range of players who, if you really felt like you really liked them, yeah, you could totally understand them doing that. And that's Spencer Fano from Utah, Caleb Lomu from Utah. They're really interestingly similar players. They really are. Caden Proctor at Alabama. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what to do with him. I really don't. He's this huge. He's a 360 plus pound guy at 6'7".
Yeah,
he's explosive. He moves. Yeah. He does all those things. But then there are moments where I don't know if you remember back to the J.C. Latham draft where it'd be like, dude, you're blocking like a guy who's 40 or 50 pounds smaller than you, and you're falling off of him because your balance is so off, or your head's so far over your feet, and it causes you to be real head heavy, bend at the waist, and end up on the ground. And Proctor does a lot of that stuff where there are out of control elements to the way he does attack defenders where I think, so I'm not sure where we're going to land with Proctor. Georgia has a dude named Monroe Freeling. I think he's good. I think he's raw in terms of what you see right now is not going to be what he finishes as. And if you buy into what his finish is, it's very, very high end. It's just going to take a little time to get there. I would say the same thing with both Utah tackles.
Yeah.
That do you remember when Brian O'Neill was coming out from Pittsburgh?
Yes. Yeah.
Or Colton Miller was coming out.
Yep.
Those guys were like spindly, tall guys who were incredibly athletic, right? But you knew they were going to have power, the power issues. You knew they were going to get moved around. And as those guys matured, grew up, and added on bulk and functional mass, they turned into really good tackles. And I think that's what Caleb Lomu's going to do as Utah's left tackle. Is he's going to take a little time, but there's so much in his game that reminds me of Brian O'Neill, where if you're running outside zone or inside zone, he's the guy. He's just got to bulk up, right? Same thing for Fano. Similar things. Like he needs to bulk up too. They're both going to get walked backwards with power. They're both going to struggle to anchor down. If you ask them to get on the move, they're going to look like tight ends, that kind of stuff. So, I mean, there's going to be a lot of things that they can do and a lot of ways they can go about it. One of the things that they have to figure out, I would think fairly quickly, is are they going to move Penei Sewell? And is a right tackle an option for them, maybe more so than the left tackle, right? And if right tackle is something that might intrigue them, it opens the door for a few other players that they could get a little bit later. You know, if you're looking at Fano and Lomu, you're looking at hoping that they're there at 17, kind of stuff, right? Molly Go is going to be gone before that point. So, it does feel like tackle is really, really going to be the position that gets really honed in on when it comes to if you're not moving Penei Sewell and he's going to stay at the right side, then you need a left tackle. Taking a developmental one to play behind Decker for a year is not a terrible choice. It's just, is he going to play? We don't know. So it's a pickle, but they're gonna have to figure themselves out of it.
So before we let you go, I wanted to ask you too. I got asked this earlier. Safety. People need to, think more about safety and linebacker. We'll see what happens with Anzalone, and you have a tight end. You just mentioned tight end. Out of all those positions, besides edge or tackle, I guess that's the two people are going to focus on. Is there any position that you kind of think, early thoughts, that you wouldn't be surprised if the Lions just pull a trigger on, even if it's a position they've prioritized before? Because a lot of the time fans would go into this draft for like tackle edge, and then they end up taking in the second round another corner or something. Yeah. Is there a position you're kind of like, hey guys, watch out for this position? They might value it a little more this year.
Safety would be that position, I think, with the unknown and they might have some pretty solid answers when it comes to draft time about Kirby Joseph's knee, but you still don't know what you're getting from Brian Branch. Toledo's got a kid named McNeil Warren. He's awesome. He'll be, I think when we get to draft time, he won't rise as high as where the Lions are, but he'll be probably in the late 20s range. He'll be a back end of round 1, early round 2 type player. Really good player. I could see safety being something that they would say, yeah, this guy's awesome, and he's everything we could possibly want at the position. We'll go there. I'm not sure that they would do that over the Taylor Decker problem, but we may be overselling that problem already. We might be. I read the stuff that they said about Ragnow, and I think, this is sort of where they're going to hone in on it. And if they find somebody that they covet, they'll probably take them.
Yeah, agreed there. Appreciate you, Scott, for your time. You guys can follow Scott on X at Bischoff_Scott. Scott, we'll talk to you soon, closer to draft time as well. Check up on you. Appreciate you, my friend. Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Thanks, there you go. Yeah, no problem. Scott Bischoff joining the show to give some great insight on Drew Petzing and what the Lions should do come draft time. Listen, I'm looking forward to talking to a good friend of mine, Caleb Burd. Does a great job with the Arizona Cardinals to kind of give us some insight. We'll see what kind of insight. I don't know how much positive insight that Caleb Burd has, but we're going to find out today. Does a great job, and let's bring him in. Mr. Caleb Burd. Kyler, how are we doing, my friend?
I'm good. How are you, man?
I'm doing great. Kyler Burd covers the Arizona Cardinals, staff writer for Fan Nation on Sports Illustrated. Kyler, we welcome Drew Petzing in with open arms for the most part. That's what fans are saying. At first, it's like, who the hell is this guy?
Yeah.
Is he the Antichrist? And then now that we're like 2 days removed, it's like, well, actually, no, he's cool. He fits a lot of what Dan wants to do. Everyone's talking. Now it's more, at first it was like 80-20, hated it. Now I think we're more like 70-30, love it. Now people, but then you see the Cardinals side of X, which is a scary, dark place, Kyler.
Yeah, it's not a place that you really want to be. And I don't think I have to educate Lions fans at all for this, because you guys have been through more than enough pain in your time too. So you guys get it. But it is quite an anti-Petzing part of the internet, I will say.
Yeah.
We just got done with our 3-year experiment with him. So,
and you got a lot of data on Drew Petzing. I know it. I'll say this, doing more research, and I do have questions for you just with the context, and you have experience covering them, but I know you guys were decimated with injuries last year. Okay. Yeah. I know Kyler Murray was only healthy for essentially one season. So I'm trying to give the guy some slack. I know he runs that 13 personnel that a lot of offensive coaches are kind of running now. He's young. He had a beer with Ben Johnson apparently, so that makes things even better. Joking aside, there's a lot of things you can like, but from the Cardinals' perspective, why do Cardinals fans hate this man? Why do they hate this man? Because people in Detroit, I'll give you an example. Calvin Shepard, DC here. He, amongst a lot of people outside of Detroit, people would say that's a guy who's going to be a head coach, which I'm not denying that completely. But here in Detroit, people are like the Miami Dolphins interviewed him. Please hire this guy. Please get him out of here. But he's dealt with a lot of injuries. So you'd think Cardinals fans would be like, Petzing dealt with a lot of injuries and try and defend the guy. They don't defend this guy at all. Why is that?
I think it comes down to two things, actually, because there are periods of time where things were relatively healthy and things were functioning, I think, exactly how Petzing wanted it to go. And I'm specifically talking about 2024. Like, if you just look at the 2024 Cardinals, which went 8-9, there were some problems, but it was mostly on the defensive side of the ball. I think that offense is what Drew Petzing actually envisioned. And it was a really, really run heavy, like pound and ground type of offense. And it was James Conner against the world. James Conner on the offensive line. We're really getting it done. And the EPA for run was incredible that year. And even Petzing's first 2 years, top 10 rushing team in the league. Like, that was his bread and butter. And then working in the tight ends and stuff. What I think Cardinals fans really fell off with Petzing, it started in 2024, but people were willing to give him a mulligan. It was the team spent the number 4 overall pick on Marvin Harrison Jr., and the passing schemes leave a lot to be desired, at least to wide receivers. I'll say off the bat, Sam Laporta is probably going to have an incredible season, like an unbelievable, possibly record-breaking season. And as long as your offensive line is healthy next year, Jahmyr Gibbs can have a great year too, I think. But if I was Amon-Ra St. Brown or Isaac Tesla or Jameson Williams, I'd be a little bit concerned because Petzing has consistently shown he really struggles to scheme ways to get wide receivers open. So that was number one. We spent this pick on a wide receiver prospect that was supposed to be generational, can't miss guy. And then he's not a bust, but he's a disappointment.
Right.
And similar thing with Kyler Murray. Like, Petzing's first season, Kyler Murray was out those first 8 games. So he only got one actual full season, all 17 games with Kyler Murray, and that was in 2024. And he had an okay year. It was nothing special. But he tried to take a player like Kyler Murray, an athlete like Kyler Murray, and turn him into like game manager, Joe Flacco, under center, manage the game type of player. So that, I think, was just like a really terrible mismanagement of the type of player Kyler Murray is. And whether that is Petzing's fault or like an organizational thing, just not having the right roster on board for a player like that, those are debatable questions. So maybe not all of the blame can go on Petzing for that. But I think those are the two things that Cardinals fans saw: misusing Kyler Murray and not knowing how to use a wide receiver like Marvin Harrison Jr. That's what really turned things off. And then this year, everything went off the rails because the offensive line was completely injured the entire year. James Conner goes down a couple weeks later. Trey Benson goes down. By the end of the year, we were on like running back 5. So the entire schema of what Petzing does just didn't work. Like, it didn't exist. So if Lions fans want to take a positive to that, it was like everyone was dead and there wasn't anyone to run Petzing's scheme. So how much can you blame him? But Cardinals fans are still pretty salty about it.
Yeah, and I've seen people. And by the way, we just got a $2. Appreciate that from Brian. He says Kyler's friend here, Lord Petzing Voldemort. Okay, so I've seen these. The guy is it true? He's smaller than Kyler Murray. I mean, can we just
He's a small guy, yeah.
He's a small guy. Yeah, he is a small guy. Because whenever I said this the other day, and this is, I mean, I feel bad. The guy better not have Twitter because he just does not want to see what's on there. But I saw someone put out that if you Google what's his height, it says reportedly he is 5'7". If it ever says reportedly in your height,
oh man,
probably not ideal. Okay,
right.
He's probably shorter than 5'7", but nonetheless. Side note: Lions fans had a big. I wanted to ask you: is he he's an on the field guy? Because John Morton was in the booth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he is on the field.
Okay, for some reason that was a big thing with John Morton. People thought John Morton sucked just because he would be in the booth with the
some
heat
of the best do it. Yeah.
Okay, so that's fair. So for Lions fans watching, he is on the field. He is active. The other thing I want to ask you is you mentioned the wide receiver production. That was something that I saw on Twitter from Cardinals fans and NFC North other fans of other teams being like, goodbye Amon-Ra, goodbye J-Mo. Is that you mentioned how Drew Petzing struggled kind of scheming guys open, which it's not the first I've heard that. We had Donnie Druin on he talked about the hire as well, and you guys both kind of said similar things. So it seems to be a common theme with Cardinals media of addressing he can scheme guys open for whatever, or at least wide receivers as much. Do you think, how much blame would you say, because this is the biggest thing I get, because Lions fans say, well, they have Kyler Murray, Kyler Murray. How much blame was some of the offensive struggles was on a guy like Kyler Murray as it pertains to Drew Petzing? Just like a blame share, because people would, at least Lions fans would kind of be like, Kyler Murray, not good, small, can't see the field. They're not pushing the ball downfield a lot.
Right.
How would you kind of diversify that blame between the two of them?
That's the most interesting part of it to me, because there was the ongoing debate even in 2024 and then the first few games of this year of like Kyler Murray just doesn't look comfortable in this offense.
Yeah.
And there are other questions too, just about Kyler Murray in general. But with Petzing in particular, it became really noticeable when that shift was made to Jacoby Brissett that the offense did seem to function better. I mean, we still lost all the rest of the games of the year, but Jacoby Brissett was putting up offensive production that Kyler Murray wasn't. So there really was somewhere a massive philosophical maybe disconnect between the type of football that Kyler Murray plays and can play and what Petzing wants. Like, I think personally, Kyler Murray can go somewhere to the right situation and be a really successful football player. Like, he's a tremendous athlete. He can find success somewhere. I just don't think it's going to be in Arizona. But when Brissett started to get those starts the rest of the season, the passing production went up pretty significantly. I think we ended this last season 13th in passing production, so that doesn't sound terrible. Brissett, but he is that archetype that Brissett wants. He wants the 6'4" pocket passer, sticks in the pocket, will deliver a ball while he's getting hit, not the guy who's going to roll out of the pocket and do all that sort of stuff. Because Petzing does not draw up bootlegs. He hardly even uses play action, but he does use 12 and 13 personnel all the time. Like, it is really just heavy sets and getting the tight ends involved and getting the running backs involved behind a good offensive line, which actually it fits pretty well with Detroit's strengths on their roster right now, as long as everyone's healthy. Like, I know you had some offensive line issues this year, but if you get back your starting five and you have Jahmyr Gibbs, who's a great talent, and you have Sam Laporta healthy again, hopefully, if all of that works perfectly in Petzing's mind, and Jared Goff is a little bit more in that archetype, a little bit more of a pocket passer type of guy. I mean, I hate to say it because I think the guy's a terrorist for what he did to my team, but people can find success in other situations. And I think another element, this is also one of the main criticisms that we have, is the situational play calling.
I've heard that a lot.
The scheme itself can absolutely work on the right team with the right personnel, 100%, like it did in 2024. It is the situational play calling stuff that is just
What do you mean by that? Guy, what do you mean by that for Lions fans? Situation.
perfect example. I have one pulled up for you. So you remember the beginning of the downfall of our season this year was when we lost to the Tennessee Titans. Like, we bought Brian Callahan one more week of a job because they beat us, which should never have happened on paper. And one part of it, you remember our running back tosses the football before he crosses the line.
Yeah.
But after that, we do have a chance to get in position to score a field goal and win. So we start on the 33, and this is our sequence of plays. A 2-yard run up the middle on first down, followed by a 0-yard run up the middle on second down, followed by a 0-yard run to the left on third down, and punt, and we lose. And that encapsulates a lot of the situational problems that he has. I cannot count to you the number of times. It is 3rd and 8, and he decided to go with a halfback draw to Amari DiMercato when James Conner and Trey Benson were both healthy, by the way. And you have Trey McBride on your team, arguably the best tight end in football. Marvin Harrison Jr., we found out that Michael Wilson is an absolute dog this year that wasn't being used until he literally had to be because everyone else was hurt. Like, those are the problems that Drew Petzing has that, in your case, hopefully Dan Campbell is a strong enough personality that he will put his imprint on how things go in game. Whereas I think Jonathan Gannon, nice guy, like really nice human being, and I wish him well, was like a really weak-willed coach as far as that goes. And I don't see Dan Campbell as a weak-willed coach.
Yeah, which is fair. Now, love Dan, not the greatest situationally. So
that's also one of his problems. To be fair,
so we have two guys. That's something to kind of keep an eye on. Last question for you, Kyler. The big thing I kept seeing, and I had to Google this more, and I asked Donnie this, is your guys' familiarity with Clayton Adams, because I keep hearing the Clayton Adams impact that the Cardinals were benefiting from. He's the offensive line coach, run game coordinator. Left this past season, went to Dallas, and their offense in the run game took a significant jump. And I know they added Javonte. I know they added to their O-line. So I understand that. But Clayton Adams is an excellent run game coordinator. I mean, and no wonder Dallas wanted to bring him in. They wanted to run the ball, and they went from 26th to 9th. I get a lot of now. You have more Lions fans kind of chiming in with the Clayton Adams stuff. How much of an impact did he have? Because the biggest thing from Drew Petzing is his run schemes. What he can do in the run game. How are we looking at that with a guy like Clayton Adams? Is it still true, nonetheless, that Drew Petzing is a great run schematic guy, or are we like, well, Clayton Adams had a lot to do with that? Where are you at with that?
I think the scheme is perfectly fine. Like, he learned this in the Kevin Stefanski world. So, like, Stefanski's going to Atlanta, right? I think he and Bijan are going to have a crazy time together. And Petzing brought a lot of that element with him from the Nick Chubb days of the Cleveland Browns, like running it down people's throats. I think the underlying ideas of the offense work. It was around like week 3, week 4 of this season when even in those first 2 wins, things didn't look right because we were expecting to come back with a top 10 run game again. We had it the past 2 years, even though the team as a whole wasn't great. And that was the most noticeable difference. And that was even when the offensive line was healthy. That was before James Conner and Trey Benson get hurt. It did look off. And so it was around like week 3, 4 that we, as a fan base, were sort of putting together who's gone. And Clayton Adams just seems like the piece that in those first 2 seasons was really critical in the actual protection scheming of runs that just didn't exist in this last season. The difference of pretty much the same starting lineup not being able to open up any gaps, any holes to run through was kind of shocking. And that is a little bit more on the technical side of positional coaching more than like a coordinator's job. So it just seems like the loss of Clayton Adams and his technical experience in doing something like that really, really hurt us. And then you see what he did in Dallas. He turned their run game around, and he saved the career of Javonte Williams too, who kind of was not really considered one of the premier running backs in the league, but had a great season. So Clayton Adams is a run guru who can go in on a day-to-day basis and actually work the players to where they'll perform it on the field. If you have an excellent offensive line coach that can handle those day-to-day particulars in Detroit, then you'll probably be okay. But you can't rely on Drew Petzing to be the guy that does that. He'll have the right idea, and he might put together a decent game plan, but those particulars like that and his situational problems, yeah, those are a little bit concerning.
Any trick? Is he a trick play guy? We're missing. People are talking about that with the missing Ben Johnson. Is he creative in that aspect, or not really?
No. No. He is not a trick play type of guy. He really was. If he has his druthers, he's just going to pound it down your throat and
old school
pass
football.
He'll pass 12 times a game if he can get away with it. So if your offensive line can hold up to that, you can get the job done. The basic problem, I think, just comes down to a lack of flexibility from his scheme.
Yeah,
he is one of those coaches that has a way that he wants football to be played, and when it goes off that script, things go off the rail really, really fast. And I think that is his major problem. He has pros, and it can work when things are working, but it can get pretty rough when things aren't working.
Yeah, well, this is going to be a roller coaster. Well, we'll see. I'm trying to be optimistic. I think the fit is it's a great fit for, at least like offensive ideologies and what Drew wants to do versus what Dan wants to do. But I'd be lying if I said that wasn't concerned. I think most Lions fans would agree with that. Appreciate you, as always, Kyler. You do great stuff, my friend. Appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
There you go, Kyler Burd. I'm coming on to talk Drew Petzing, helping me in my mental health. Trying to explain how Drew Petzing could potentially work out for the Detroit Lions. Now, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to be joined by our good friend, Flannel Sam. So we'll see you in 45 seconds, and then we'll talk to Flannel Sam, and we'll see what's on his mind about this Drew Petzing thing. But we'll see you in a quick minute. Pardon my interruption, but I'm here to tell you about our friends over at Sleeper, and specifically Sleeper Picks. Very simple. All you got to do is choose 2 to 8 of your favorite players on game day or across different sports. It could be pregame, live, no matter what. And it's a ton of fun. I have my Rams Seahawks picks for you guys today. I'm going to give them out to you. It's very simple. Matthew Stafford, I have more on the passing touchdowns. He's at 1.5. I think he gets 2 passing touchdowns. He's been doing that all year. More on Puka Nacua, anytime touchdown score against the Seahawks, and more on JSN 90.5 receiving yards. You guys can copy my picks. Go over to the app, use the code CT Sports, and get involved today. Shout out to Sleeper as always for sponsoring. Now let's get back to it. Is the noise gone, guys? I want to make sure I'm fixing. I got this all working for you guys. I don't know. Is someone saying the mic was making noise? Is it still making noise? If so, I'll fix it again. But I'm waiting for the chat here. Are we good? Okay, it's fixed. Appreciate you guys. All right, sorry about that. I don't know what that was. I didn't hear it. Okay. Appreciate you guys. Much love to you guys. All right. Appreciate it. Yeah, that would piss me off. I had mic issues going on. So we want to make sure that's all fixed. I don't know what that was. But let's bring on my good friend to talk some things. Drew Petzing, Detroit Lions offseason, Brad Holmes, etc. Flannel Sam. Flannel, how we doing?
I'm doing great. And what's funny, man? As much as I'd love to talk Drew Petzing, and I promise we will get to that, and I've heard a lot of your thoughts. I know most of you haven't heard mine. One thing that you talked about early on in the show I thought was interesting was the fact that John Schneider was Executive of the Year. And I think that what the Seahawks did, what John Schneider did, could actually be a pretty decent blueprint for what we want Brad Holmes to do, because this was a Seahawks team which, had a 10-win season last year, had a couple winning seasons, a playoff appearance before. They have a bit of a core with guys like Witherspoon and Kenneth Walker, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Julian Love, et cetera, et cetera. It's not like they had to overhaul everything, but what the Seahawks did, and I know the first part isn't as much Schneider as it is Mike McDonald, they hit a grand slam home run on their OC hire, Clint Kubiak.
Yep.
The guy is an absolute stud. Hopefully the Lions did that with Drew Petzing. Also, what the Seahawks did, they hit on a couple of really important draft picks. Gray Zabel. I'm not saying he's perfect or anything, but he's their starting left guard.
Yeah.
But what was even a bigger hit was Nick Emenwari, an absolute stud safety, third on the team in tackles, third on the team in passes defended, an interception, 2.5 sacks, has just been a stalwart of that defense, but also very, very impactful offseason moves. Say what you want about Sam Darnold. They needed a quarterback. They got one. Sam Darnold, even though he's not the biggest reason why they're winning, he's been competent enough, and they damn well might get to the Super Bowl. You look at
good contract too, by the way. Good contract.
Absolutely, good contract. You look at DeMarcus Lawrence, Pro Bowl defensive end. I would say he's their best edge rusher. He's first on the team in tackles for loss, has 6 sacks, has been insanely impactful. Even Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp hasn't put up huge numbers, but he's second on the team in receiving yards. And what they do at the trade deadline, they traded for Rashid Shaheed, which has turned into a massive move for them with special teams. You might as well call him Rashid Hester or Devin Shaheed. 2 touchdowns in the second half of the season, 1 in the playoff game. Are you kidding me? And to top it all off, you had a couple of the 2024 draft picks, Byron Murphy and A.J. Barner, take big leaps. Second-year leaps. Byron Murphy, I think, went from half a sack his rookie year to 7 his second year. A.J. Barner turned into a stud tight end, third on their team in receiving yards. So when you look at all of that, that's stuff that I think the Lions could do. Hopefully Drew Petzing is the guy, because they already solved that problem, or hopefully so, but it's not like the Seahawks invented the wheel. They just made they had a smart offseason with a couple impactful draft picks for this season, not for the future, for this season, and some really impactful offseason signings. And they were active at the free agent at the trade deadline.
I think, you nailed it. I want to, and people, when they hear this, are going to try and that's why I preference. You know what I'm trying to say. Yeah, thank you. And when I said the John Schneider thing, I was like, guys, 2023 Brad Holmes had an excellent draft. So I'm not trying to, he won Executive of the Year twice, back to back. So I'm not saying the guy is a bad GM, but I'm glad you kind of understood what I was trying to say is like off season for John Schneider, when you have back-to-back drafts the last 2 years where you have 3 impactful players right away, like that's going to help. That's why they're having the success they're having, along with all the things you mentioned, trade at the deadline and all that stuff. But I think my takeaway, Sam, and I want to ask you if I'm off on this, from the playoffs, you look at the last 4 teams, you have the Broncos, Patriots, Seahawks, Rams. You know what I'm seeing from these teams? Like, okay, Drake May is an incredible quarterback. I think Drake May is going to be that top, elite guy that everyone's going to be watching over the next couple of years. No doubt. But Matthew Stafford, another one. Matthew's a Hall of Famer. Okay. But Bo Nix, until now Jarrett Stidham, but Bo Nix and Sam Darnold, people want to get rid of Jared Goff, but you know what the reality of it is, Sam? Look at who's calling plays on these defenses, and look how good these defenses are. Like Chris Shula on the Rams, he's going to get a head coaching gig. That defense is really good, good D-line. You look at the Patriots, Mike Vrabel, that defense is overachieving, but they have some guys on there. They spent a lot of money, obviously, but they built that defense one offseason. The Broncos, with Vance Joseph, and coaching obviously matters. It's very important. I talked about it with the 49ers run until they got destroyed, but still coaching matters. But you look at defenses, you look at good coaching, top 10 scoring defense, as I believe all the teams left are in the top 10 in scoring defense. Booner brought this up, and I agree with him. We talk a lot about the offense and what Drew Petzing is going to do, but in reality, they're probably still going to be very good. You know what I mean? Could Drew Petzing mess things up? Of course. But my worry is, what's his defense going to be? Because if you're going to make a playoff run, dude, It's going to be what this defense turns into. Are we going to be a top 10 unit? Are you going to be a very good unit? And who's coaching it? Kelvin Shepard. Is that fair to look at more? I think Booner brought it up. I agree with him 1,000%. People are focusing, I think, too much on the wrong side of the ball. Me and Booner have been talking about that. It's on defense.
Yeah, I think when you watch the playoffs, it's really undeniable that thought comes to your head, that when you just watch these teams, first of all, the eye test, the defense looks different than what we've seen from the Lions. It looks faster. It just looks more explosive, more playmakers all across the board. The defense looks better, but the stats back that up as well, because you're absolutely right. All of those teams have top 10 scoring defense in terms of points allowed per game. In fact, Seahawks are 1, Broncos are 3, Patriots are 4, Rams are 10. That really is a telling stat. And another stat, I believe it is 10 out of the last 12 Super Bowl winners have had top 10 scoring defenses and points allowed per game. And don't get me wrong, I'm somebody who has given some crap to the offense. Like John Morton was a terrible hire.
There's issues, no doubt.
I think a lot of what they did this season in terms of total stats, like points per game, was a little fake.
I agree.
Look at what they did in games that they lost. Look at their running game in games that they lost. Look at those absolute stinkers they had at Philly, at Green Bay, at Minnesota. Those, 10 points in the first 3 quarters against Pittsburgh. We go on and on and on. But, the 52 against the Bears, 44 and 44 against the Cowboys and Commanders kind of, spit shines the turd a little bit. Not that it was a turd, but you understand what I'm saying. But absolutely right. The Lions have never quite figured out defense, even in the Brad and Dan era. They were close last year. I thought it was impressive what they were able to do despite the injuries. I think if they were healthy, they would have had a damn good defense last year. This year, it looked pretty good, maybe through the first 10 weeks, but the last 7 or so, it got noticeably worse. I understand injuries have something to do with it, but the run defense kind of took an ish late in the season. The pressure wasn't always there. Yeah, defense, I know it's cliche that defense wins championships, but it's really borne out by this year's playoffs and by past Super Bowl champions. You got to have a good defense, preferably a dominant defense. And if you have that dominant defense, Jared Goff, to get back to your original point, can absolutely win the Lions a Super Bowl, even if he is far from perfect. Sam Darnold is also far from perfect. Bo Nix, even before he got hurt, is far from perfect. Jared Goff is better than both of them. I don't think he's better than Joe Gray and Matthew Stafford, but I do think he's better than Bo Nix and Sam Darnold.
Agreed. Yeah, I agree. And I've said this for years now. Me and Adam had the same kind of thought process on this. And I said this when we were doing a show together as well. You look at teams that can win a Super Bowl, or at least, obviously dynasties, which, Brad mentioned sustained success. But in those guys, you're not having like Andy Reid Mahomes, or Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. So I don't like to use those as examples. Some people try to, I just don't. But the thing for longevity is GM, head coach, quarterback, for longevity to be in the pitcher, the contender pitcher for a while. I think when you look at winning a championship, what matters is head coach, quarterback, and your defense. So coaching, who you have a quarterback. I think Dan Campbell's a good coach. Obviously, he's got to get his coordinators right. But Jared Goff, I'm with you. I think he's good enough to at least get you there, and you have a chance to win a championship. The defense has been the biggest question mark. But just on the Dan Campbell part of it, I know people, they hired Drew Petzing, and a lot of fans are like, well, hey, Dan, you can't mess this up. Can't mess this one up after you just fired John Morton. Anthony Lynn, I know he was in a different situation, but you hired Anthony Lynn. He's fired. So technically you're 1 for 3, could be 1 for 4 if Drew Petzing doesn't work out, or you're 2 for 4, depending on what happens. How much pressure is on Dan Campbell? Because I would argue it's not just the offensive coordinator. It's what happens with Calvin Shepard. If you fire him, now we're talking just coordinators in general. You're 1 for 4 since starting as the Detroit Lions head coach. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown comes out on his podcast and says, you, Sam, don't know ball for worrying about Drew Petzing. You don't know ball, and fans need to chill out. And Lions fans overreact, when in reality, these people have been watching football and watching the Detroit Lions for much longer than Amon-Ra has. And on top of that, Amon-Ra didn't even want to come to Detroit because he knew how much of a laughable organization it was before he got here. So I'm confused where Amon-Ra St. Brown gets off trying to say that fans don't deserve to have an opinion on the team, or at least they're overreacting because Dan Campbell hasn't been good on hiring OZs. And I wouldn't doubt that a lot of those fans who are upset about Drew Petzing were also upset with John Morton, who was fired. So can you blame the fans on this? So what do you kind of think of the Dan Campbell narrative of this? How much pressure is on Dan Campbell? And then you can also chime in down Ross' comments, because his were all over Twitter yesterday.
Yes. They missed the playoffs, for Pete's sake. There's a lot of pressure. Dan Campbell just fired his second offensive coordinator and made a hire that, while there's some good things I like about Drew Petzing, and we can get into more detail on those in a second.
Yeah.
I really, really, really don't like that the Mike McDaniel wasn't a fit. That rubbed me the wrong way, especially when he took a offensive coordinator position with the Chargers. So yeah, there's a lot of pressure on Dan Campbell. I mean, think about this. And I know we beat this to death, but I feel like some fans and even some of the players need to get it in their head. The Lions had 4 All-Pros and missed the playoffs. The Lions had 4 All-Pros plus Jahmyr Gibbs, plus J-Mo, plus a quarterback who a lot of you think is top 5, plus Monty, plus 12 games of Branch, and missed the playoffs. That's so beyond unacceptable that every single human being who's ever even watched a down of Lions football should be able to have a question about it without Amon-Ra going at fans. It's just, there seems to me, and I think a lot of people share this opinion, there is a Lions arrogance that just drives me insane. The type of arrogance that I don't think they've warranted with what they've accomplished. Yes, for Lions history, this is the best that any of us have had it, but it's trending towards more heartbreak. It's trending towards being more like the Fugazi that a lot of Lions fans saw in the 90s. That's what it's trending towards when they miss the playoffs. So at the end of the day, everybody has the right to ask a question. And I think that there needs to be a little bit more of a humbling when it comes to the Lions, because don't get me wrong, it's not just Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's a long line of guys. You go back to Jared Goff on his interview with Carson Anderson, the fans who think that we can't do it, that really pisses me off. Well, what pissed me off was the way you played at Minnesota, Jared. For the most part, you could, but that's the thing. At that point, the Lions' odds weren't good. And then they eventually became a 0% chance it didn't make the playoffs. It was, Dan Campbell, we're good. Brad Holmes, you could go on and on about Brad Holmes. The receipts after 2023, the need. You guys really love need. What do you mean by aggressive? Why do we need another one? We have Aiden. It's just Aiden Hutchinson even blaming the refs after the Steelers game and then going on the NFL Today or whatever and saying, the most important thing for the defense next year is to get healthy. I know I'm rambling on and on, but it's just continuous examples of Lions arrogance. And Amon-Ra St. Brown, I'm not going to lie, he was one I wasn't expecting it from. I cannot believe that he said something like that after how the season played out. Dan Campbell just hired and fired John Morton and stripped his play calling duties after 8 games and then fired him. Of course, we're going to be like, are you sure this next guy, when you passed up a much more qualified guy in terms of resume, is there? Are you sure that Petzing's the guy? Not saying he's not. I'm just saying that every fan who has ever watched a second of Lions football has the right to question.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's, the fact of the matter is not too many head coaches get to consistently get their coordinators right. Like if you keep missing on coordinators, not too many head coaches get opportunity. And I'm not saying fire Dan Campbell. I'm just stating a fact. In the NFL, it's not common. And I think what Dan and Brad have that other regimes don't have around the league is that they're coaching and running the Detroit Lions, where, people have watched a lot of miserable, disgusting football, and then Brad and Dan come around, and I'm not saying it's just the wins. I'm saying the accolades. Brad wins Executive of the Year. Dan Campbell's been in contention for Coach of the Year. Like, they had an amazing start to this kind of rebuild, and it's the best thing the Lions fans have seen. But we have to get to a point eventually where we're not looking at this as the best we've seen. We have to look at it as, is this what it should be? Is this the football are we where we expected to be, in year 5, going into year 6, just continuing through this process? And, like we can get into the Drew Petzing thing. Like I'm with you on the Mike McDaniel part. And I know, shout out to Neil Rule, but I think Spencer was mentioning how Neil had a take, and I don't know, people in the chat can back me up on this. I don't know exactly the take, but I think Neil, and then we're talking something about, he wasn't maybe the fit because he was going to leave after a year. And I'm not saying this is what Dan thought, but Drew Petzing was going to be here. He's going to be steady Eddie and be here for a couple years. Number one, I doubt if that was actually something Dan thought about, that is dumb. Like, you should never think I love this guy, but I just don't know. I don't want him to leave after a year. You should never, you want to hire the best person for the job, even if it's for one season. So for Dan, there is a lot of pressure on him to get this hire right. And I think Drew Petzing does a lot of things I really like fit-wise, like football-wise. I've talked to 2 Cardinals writers. They hate him, clearly. But I will give him the benefit of the doubt and argue that maybe the fit there with the personnel, Kyler Murray, he's not really an under center guy. He's small. He's, probably someone that you want to put in the pistol or in shotgun more so. He's a smaller guy. He's too small to be under center consistently. Jared Goff, on the other hand, like Jacoby Brissett when he had more success. I think Colton put out, they're really good on third down. They've been really good on third down. Drew values under center football, the run game, heavy personnel, heavy play action. So I can see where Dan sees Drew Petzing as like a philosophy, in terms of philosophy, like a fit. The thing I don't like hearing, though, and I've heard this consistently from Cardinals writers, and people want to be like, oh, it's Cardinals writers. Guys, we love our media. I mean, okay, these guys, we listen to what they say. We can't just discount people covering the Cardinals. Like, we can't just be like, well, these guys are stupid. No, like, they cover the Cardinals. They watch every football game. They watch every down of Cardinals football. They keep bringing up his lack of adjustment, his situational play calling, and his lack of creativity, which, like, I'm kind of curious to where that kind of comes into play. If that's something that maybe during the season we're like, ooh, we're watching some Drew Petzing football, and we're like, didn't like that. I think Kyler just brought up how against the Titans, I don't know if you heard that part where
I did.
Yeah, like that, dude, if that happened in a football game where, you have a drive to go win the game and you go run and punt, people are going to be freaking furious. So what has been your kind of thoughts now, a couple days removed from the Drew Petzing hire? Where are you at? Because I crashed out immediately. He came out of nowhere. The Mike McDaniel thing pissed me off, of course. But it makes sense. I think he just went to Cali. I think that was more of a personal decision. I'm not saying he would have came to the Lions, but I am disappointed. But I think Drew Petzing fits. There are just concerns for me. I mean, there are, no doubt.
Yeah, I think this is a complicated question because I'll start with just basic Drew Petzing stuff that I've been looking at and researching, stuff that I like, stuff that I don't like. I'll start briefly with football concerns. And this one you can maybe take with a grain of salt. In 2 of his 3 years with the Arizona Cardinals, they were bottom 10 in the NFL in points per game. I get it. 2025, they were very injured. 2023, Kyler missed most of the year, but still, I don't love that. But I think the thing that concerns a lot of us and things we consistently hear from even Arizona Cardinals media is wide receiver production. And the Detroit Lions, they've consistently over the past 4 years gotten a lot of production from their wide receivers, and they've invested a lot in their wide receivers. They paid Amon-Ra, they paid J-Mo, they traded picks to get Isaac Tesla, and you're looking at the Arizona Cardinals and how they use their wide receivers. I mean, in 2023, they had 2 receivers, wide receivers, not counting Trey McBride, that got between 500 and 600 receiving yards, nobody above 600. You look at 2024, Marvin Harrison Jr., I think, had 885. Michael Wilson had 500 something, nothing else. And then last year, Michael Wilson did top 1,000, which good for him. Marvin Harrison Jr. didn't really look like he developed a whole lot. I know some people think Marvin Harrison Jr. isn't any good. I actually do think he's good. I think he will have a big year next year, but you can make fun of me for that all you want. He had 612 games. Obviously, Trey McBride was a stud, probably the most productive tight end in football, maybe the best tight end in football. Yep. I think Sam Laporta is going to have a grand old time, but I wonder if Drew Petzing will adjust anything to the personnel that he has, because you can't be the offensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions and misuse the wide receivers. And I get it. The Lions have better ones than he's ever seen with the Arizona Cardinals. I just hope that he understands that and adjust a bit. Because we saw it a little bit with John Morton early this season. I think I brought it up on this show that we remember Jameson Williams wasn't getting a lot of production. You got nothing from Khalif and Tesla early on. Really not a whole lot from Khalif or Tesla throughout the whole season. But at the beginning, it was really, really glaring. I want Drew Petzing to realize he's got maybe the best wide receiver duo in football. He's got a second-year player who the Lions, it would really behoove them for him to produce given what they traded up to get him.
Yeah.
Just know your personnel, Drew Petzing, adjust accordingly.
The biggest thing I have question-wise is part of me, and I'm trying to be positive on this, that, Drew Petzing isn't going to come to Detroit and be like, yeah, we're just not going to involve the receivers as much. I hope that's the case. Or I hope that's not the case. I hope that's not the case. Who knows? I don't think he will do that because, I think Dan is going to have a heavy influence in like, hey, we're getting these dudes involved. I mean, when Dan took over play calling, they got them involved. So I try to have more hope. I try to have more hope in that aspect. But the thing I'm curious isn't necessarily Amon-Ra and J-Mo. It's more Isaac Tesla because, they ran a lot of 3 wide receiver sets where they had multiple wide receivers on the field. They ran, 12 personnel. A lot of teams are running 13 personnel with 3 tight ends. I know the Rams are doing it a lot, and they still utilize Devontae and Puka Nacua. The Steelers do it a lot with Darnell, Pat, and Jonnu Smith. So it's kind of like, where the leagues, a lot of these offensive minds are kind of going back to more tight ends on the field. So I like that he does utilize that. They'll probably bring in a tight end, but it's the Isaac Tesla thing for me, Sam. And I've always had an issue with it, not with Isaac. At the time I was like, who the hell, who is this man? And why did you trade up so many picks to get him? I think he's a good player. I think he has a lot of talent. Clearly the confusing part for me is still the J-Mo thing. It's not that J-Mo, listen, J-Mo's an incredible player. It's extending him with 2 years left after you just drafted and traded up for a wide receiver. You know what I mean? Like you had 2 years left of control from J-Mo. I think you're looking at that, you're like, you probably could have waited, saw what you had in Isaac, and then determined, well, is Isaac good enough to be our wide receiver too? We could get for cheap. We can get cheaper at wide receiver too and kind of allocate the money elsewhere. So I think that's where my mind goes with this Isaac Tesla thing, is kind of how he fits into all this after you just spent all that money on Jameson Williams. I've always had that take though with that, Sam. I just don't really understand that part of it. And I think that's been my biggest gripe with Brad Holmes, to be honest, is just the instant rewarding guys. It's just like, up for contract paid, up for contract paid, up for contract paid. And then eventually you get to a point where you're like, wait, up for contract, we can't pay you. We don't have money. And then you have all these guys that are really good players that need money.
Yeah.
That's where I get confused.
Yeah. And to piggyback off of that, you look at one of the plethora of reasons why this season failed is because, at least for this year, and I'm not victory lapping, I'm not saying I predicted it, I'm just saying what happened. The Aleem McNeil contract and the Kirby Joseph one do not look great right now. Aleem coming back from an injury was really, really bad, not up to his standards. Kirby Joseph played well when he was on the field, but man, if even I think the most slappy positive Lions fans are worried about that knee because it was just so strange with just how long they kept him not on IR. You know what I mean? It just seemed like he's coming back. No, he's not. He's practicing. No, he's not. I'm curious of if it's degenerative or not. So that's, yeah, to your point, they pretty much paid damn near everybody up to this point, and who knows if they're going to be able to keep doing that. When it comes to J-Mo and Isaac Tesla, let me just make my prediction. I hope that I'm wrong, but for better or for worse, I do think Isaac Tesla will not ever produce that.
No, I agree. I feel bad. He's not going to have a big enough role. He's just not.
He's not, because I do think that with Sam Laporta, hopefully he comes back, with even maybe Brock Wright. Who knows? Maybe the Lions invest more draft capital in a tight end or get one trade free agency, even if it's just like a lower tier one. I think that that's where a Drew Petzing feels comfortable. I don't think Dan Campbell will necessarily have a problem with Drew Petzing using a lot of 2 tight end sets, 3 tight end sets, which he did a lot of in Arizona. I just think Isaac Tesla is going to be the odd man out, and that will always be a little bit of a mark on Brad Holmes's resume until or unless the Lions win a Super Bowl. And the thing is, I think we can all see that Isaac TeSlaa has talent. Some of the catches he's made, obviously a lot of touchdowns. That's obviously really, really nice to see. And I think a couple of times he had a wow moments where like, wow, this guy's really talented. But he also had 15 catches for 220 yards, and the Lions just brought in an offensive coordinator who was known for wide receivers not getting a lot of production and 12 and 13 personnel. So Isaac TeSlaa is probably not very happy right now, him personally.
yeah, that's fair. You know, I don't know. I think they're in a interesting. I mean, I got asked this earlier about that safety position. I mean, you have Brian Branch, who, you know, he just tore his Achilles, and you know he's probably going to come back. I don't know. With modern medicine, I guess he could come back earlier, but usually probably midway through the season. And then Kirby Joseph has potentially, I don't know, like Nagy said, degenerative. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I don't know. And they're going to probably find out more about that. But that safety spot looks a lot different. And this is why I've harped so much on the window conversation. I don't know where you're at with that, because this is where I'm at with the window stuff. And I said this to the doc yesterday, and I know people hate to hear this, but you have to stick with me as I give this take out. Their best chance to win is over. And that doesn't mean they don't have a chance to win. Their best chance to win is over. When you're talking about their best players on rookie deals, Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn, weaker division, that chance is over. Like, you know, you had Frank Ragnow, like all that was their chance. That's when Brad could have went all in, because you had Panay, Amon-Ra, Aiden, Kirby, Brian, Jack, Jameer, Jamo, all these guys not making that much money. So you could have been more aggressive to try and make moves. Now we're at a point where that window to me is kind of, and I say this is how I'm looking at it. That window's closed. Now there's kind of this new window where it's more difficult, but they can still make a run. Like, I think the biggest thing that you have to, really think about is you have to have, this is what contenders are able to do, have rookies come in and contribute on cheap deals. You know, like that helps because you don't have a lot of money to go sign really good players. But if you can hit on draft picks like we just talked about with John Snyder, they can come in and produce for you on cheap contracts. So there's a massive advantage in the NFL when you have guys that are on rookie deals contributing for you. And I think if they can do that in this draft, maybe find some good deals in free agency, free up some money, go address some positions, I think they can be back, fourth place schedule, and they can go make the playoffs and try and make a run. It just becomes more difficult because, like I said, you have less resources, less draft capital this year unless they make a trade. You don't have, obviously, Frank Ragnow. Guys are more expensive. And on top of that, the division is harder. I mean, Micah Parsons is here now with the Packers. The Bears have their Bears just come off a playoff run. Now they're going to try and make moves. If God forbid, JJ, shows a pulse and he's a good quarterback, now you have three teams that are going to be in this thing. So I think that's where I'm at with the window stuff. So I think your best chance is over. It doesn't mean it's completely, this chance can't happen. It's just going to be more difficult. The road to a Super Bowl is more difficult because Brad Holmes respectfully sat on his hands and did the draft and develop thing, which, now there's no more, the guys that are draft and developed are just paid now. So they're just expensive. That's where I'm at with it.
Yeah, and it's really, really hard to win in the NFL. And I'm worried that moving forward, because these cap hits are going to get bigger. We're talking about potentially restructuring multiple contracts moving forward, including Jared Goff, which wasn't an issue, back in 2023, for example. Right. I think there are a couple of instances that knock on wood, if the Lions don't win a Super Bowl in this era, that I think will haunt a lot of fans and maybe be on the gravestones, the football gravestones of Brad Holmes. I'll just go with Brad Holmes for now. I look at the 2023 trade deadline where they didn't make that move for that edge rusher, whether it was Montez Sweat or Chase Young. And remember, back then there was no even AQM. AQM wasn't even there. Aiden had no help on the other end.
Right.
And I really, truly think that if Brad Holmes made that type of a move, that the Lions would have at least gotten to the Super Bowl. you never know what would have happened against the Chiefs, because people always look at the Josh Reynolds drops. The Lions also gave up 27 points in the second half of that 49ers game and didn't get any stops. That's one thing where the 49ers, for example, made a trade for Chase Young. The Bears did Montez Sweat, which obviously didn't do them that good then, but he's helping them now. And the Lions got Donovan Peoples-Jones. That some people say, oh, the Lions made the NFC Championship game anyway. You know, that was still a success, but man, you have to maximize those chances. And that was, like you said, their best chance was 2023. And I also think that the way we talk about at the beginning, how masterful that John Schneider handled the offseason. And you look at teams like the Bears and the Patriots, who made all kinds of moves and great draft picks that really overhauled, went from worst to first, all of that. The Lions, when you really take stock, they had a horrific offseason. That's how you go from being 15-2 to 9-8. Other things have to happen, but you look at the moves that they made, their most impactful moves were, you know, Roy Lopez, Avante Maddox, Rocky Sin, DJ Reed it turned out to be a bad move, at least for this year, because he was hurt and not very good when he came back from injury. And they also let all of the impact moves that they had prior to the 2024 offseason. Carlton Davis didn't want to pay him. Kevin Zeitler didn't want to pay him. Zadarius Smith didn't want to keep him under contract. And then the draft, I think it was pretty meh in terms of this year. I'll give Tate Ratledge. He was an impact rookie. I will give him that. Tyleek, C, Isaac Tesla, didn't need him. The 2023 trade deadline and then the offseason heading into this season, I think both of them were, for lack of a better term, disasters. If you want to say the 2023 trade deadline wasn't a disaster because they made the NFC Championship game anyway, fine. But I don't even think we as fans, or maybe Dan or Brad Holmes, even realize how close they actually were, because they had a 17-point lead in the NFC Championship game. If they would have just made that one move, I think they would have at least gotten to the Super Bowl. And we wouldn't be talking about windows or anything. We might be talking about, hey, we're just, resting on this ring, kiss the ring or whatnot. But
yeah, no, you don't believe me. Believe your head coach. Dan Campbell said it.
Yeah.
Fellas, it's going to be harder to get back here. I mean, He said it to the players. Like he kept it real with them. It's hard, man. It's hard. And that's why it's not just the Lions. This is the NFL. That's what makes the NFL so great, is you have worst to first. That's an actual thing. Like, teams can go from the Bears or the Packers, Patriots can go from a bad team to, NFC champ or AFC championship and NFC championship contenders. And the Bears obviously lost to the Rams, but they had a chance to win at the end. Caleb Williams threw that interception, but they were there. Like, that's what happens, in the NFL is, things happen. Now, look at the Texans. The Texans I like to use as an example, because the Texans were very aggressive. Like, they gave, they didn't, maybe give CJ Stroud the best O-line, but they had enough. Like, they had a Super Bowl defense. You had a quarterback that you kind of saw play well at one point. They surrounded him with weapons. And guess what? CJ Stroud sucked in the biggest game of the year, and they lost. But guess what? Guess who has to get paid soon, Flannel? Will Anderson.
Yeah.
CJ Stroud. Daniil Hunter's not going to be there forever. And then after that, you're like, shit. Now you're going to have to sit there and be like, well, we that was our Super Bowl defense. That was our best chance. So it's not just the Lions. Every team goes through this. And I'm curious to where they are this year with expectations for you. Is I think it's fair. I've seen mix of it. Like I talked about this with Booner, and people are like, just make the playoffs. Just make the playoffs. Yeah, but I mean, are we going to still hold the Lions to that same standard of being contenders in the NFL? Like, what are expectations for you? I know it's hard because you don't know what they're going to do this offseason, but assuming that Brad and Dan, put together a pretty respectable offseason, like, what are you going into the season with? What should be Lions fans' expectations this year? Is it win the division? Is it make a playoff run, be in contention, or is it just make the playoffs and improve from this year? Where are you at?
God, I still think it has to be a Super Bowl, because
it should be Super Bowl or bust to me. I think that's a fair thing every year. People should.
Yeah, and I can also say that while saying, do I think the Lions will win a Super Bowl this year? I do not. But I would implore Brad Holmes to prove me wrong. Make more impactful offseason moves. Hit on a draft again. sign some impactful free agents, make a trade, and then maybe I would actually believe that the Lions will win a Super Bowl. But when we talked about it, I talked about it at the beginning. The Lions had 4 All-Pros, plus Jahmyr Gibbs, plus Jameson Williams, plus Jared Goff, plus well, Brian Branch moving forward. That's a little bit iffy, but you understand.
He played 12 games.
They've got a really, really nice core that I think if Brad Holmes does a better job with the in the margins moves, or maybe even more than in the margins moves, those impact moves, we could be talking about them, especially with the last place schedule, as a team that could be favorites to win the division. And at that point, if you win your division, you have to go into the playoffs as Super Bowl or bust. So yeah, given the talent that they have, given all of the arrogance of the organization, go win a Super Bowl. And then I'll shut my mouth forever and basically become, Lions boner flannel for life. That's all they have to do. But not a second sooner.
Yeah, well, I wanted, before I get you out of here, I wanted to ask you NFC North, just in general, because Matt LaFleur kept his job, and I think rightfully so. I wouldn't have fired Matt LaFleur. And, Jeff Iafrate just left. He's the head coach of the Dolphins, so good luck over there. But they're interviewing candidates to be their defensive coordinator, Jonathan Gannon. They're interviewing some guys that are bigger names, or at least guys that are more respected around the NFL. So the Packers are going to have a healthy defense. And their defense with Micah and Rashawn Gary, they're pretty good. They have things they need to address, of course. They're not like this immediate Super Bowl contender, but they're a really good team. They probably need a number 1 receiver still. I don't think anyone's really blossomed there, but the Packers are going to be, they beat you twice. So they beat you twice this year. The Bears, we'll see what happens in the offseason. I'm curious to see how Ryan Poles. This is what I like to see. I like to look around the league and see teams that are in similar positions than the Lions years ago. Like the Bears are coming off a playoff run. Now what do you do? And I want to see what the Bears do. Vikings bring back Brian Flores. They assume JJ is going to take a step. They might look for a veteran quarterback. Who knows? But they have we know what their team is. They're going to be in that kind of, they're going to cause problems or whatever. When you look at this division going into this year, who's the biggest threat to you? And what team do you look at as a team that you probably fear the most? And maybe fear is the wrong word, but you're more weary of, or, you're a team that could challenge the Lions consistently. What team is that?
The Bears. I would say the Chicago Bears. I know it's easy to say because they just won the division and won a playoff game, but I know you're going to be with me on this. I think Caleb Williams is a budding superstar. I understand that there's things that he needs to clean up, like the completion percentage was obviously not great, but the talent that he has, the throws that he made, the explosive plays that he was able to generate for the Bears in so many clutch situations, particularly in the game against the Packers in the regular season and in the playoffs. He's just got God-given ability that usurps everyone in the NFC North, almost anyone in the league. I think Ben Johnson's a phenomenal head coach. I also think that Ryan Poles proved a lot of people, even us Lions fans, wrong with the way he acquired players who are going to be there next year on the offensive line, drafting Colston Loveland, drafting Luther Burden, drafting Kyle Monungai. We'll see with Ozzie Trapillo's injury, but that was a pretty damn good pick as well. I think with the Rams, they got the coach and the quarterback right for probably the first time in concert with each other in franchise history. Now we'll just see what they do with their defense. I think it's a bit of a question mark. I think they've got some talent, but I think that's really what the Bears need to work on. If they can fix their defense and if Caleb Williams can just develop a little bit, they will be scary moving forward. But that being said, what if the Vikings figure out the quarterback situation? What if Micah Parsons comes back healthy for a revenge tour type season? What if they're more healthy throughout the season? What if Christian Watson and Jaden Reed play 15 plus games? What if Tucker Kraft comes back? I mean, the more I talk about it, the more I'm like, man, this could be an absolute gauntlet moving forward. The Lions could get some guys back too, and there's some things they could do to make themselves scarier than anybody. But I think right now, even with all that I said, complimenting a lot of NFC North teams, I still think the Bears are the Lions' biggest threat. And for the number one reason is that I think Caleb Williams is a superstar. I think next year Caleb is the best quarterback in the NFC North, even above Jared Goff. And I'm not trying to, I know people are going to say, Bears fan flannel, but if you don't see the talent, if you don't see the growth that he took, if you don't see just the leadership and clutch moments, then you're just being a blind hater. You just have preconceived things about Caleb that you're never going to change your mind about no matter what.
Yeah, I listen. I'm a big Caleb Williams guy. I know that's the most difficult thing because he is now in the division, but
Yeah.
loved him in college. I know he can come off a little more controversial because of the nails and how corny he is or he can be. I get all of that, but you can't deny. And I know people bring up the interceptions in the playoffs, but people forget he turned the ball over in the playoffs. I'm not arguing that.
Yeah.
But in the regular season, he takes care of the football. Like that's actually one of his best traits is he takes care of the football. So I think people will be like, well, he turns the ball over a lot. Well, not really. I mean, he hasn't had double-digit interceptions his first 2 years in the league. I mean, he's done a really good job taking care of the ball. So I'm with you on that. I think year two in Ben Johnson's system, depending on what they do, like the Bears, by the way, like that's what I mentioned Ryan Poles, like they could go out and get like Trey Hendricks. Like they could go out and try and make like a big move for, a pass rusher because they dealt with a lot of injuries. I mean, you brought this up on the show last week, like how many injuries they dealt with the Bears. So
many, like linebackers, Austin Booker, secondary, Kyler Gordon, Jalen Johnson. I mean, what Dennis Allen was able to cobble together was a damn good coaching job on his part. Hey, speaking of things that the Lions probably could have done better, hiring a defensive coordinator for 2025 when Robert Saleh, Dennis Allen, and Brandon Staley were out there. I'm not saying Kelvin Shepard can't be good moving forward, but having a learning on the job DC and this kind of a Super Bowl window, I think was a mistake.
I agree. Good stuff today, Flannel. Appreciate the hell out of you. Real quick, before we get you out of here, NFC Championship game, AFC Championship game. How do you think it's going to go? Who's in the Super Bowl and who's your winner?
I'm going to go Rams, Patriots. It's tough because the Rams haven't looked that great, and I know Seattle is a tough place to play, but I think this is the game where Sam Darnold makes a couple back-breaking mistakes. And I'm higher on Darnold than some, but I think he could cost the Seahawks the game. And, hey, the Broncos just don't have a quarterback. And the Patriots have the type of defense, which shout out to them for what they did in the offseason, by the way, adding to their defense. The Patriots have the type of defense that is going to make life very, very difficult on Jarrett Stidham. And I don't trust the Broncos running game without J.K. Dobbins. I've got, not saying that the Patriots aren't going to deserve credit, but I kind of have them as a default winner in this game.
Yep.
What happened to Bo Nix was a damn tragedy for the Broncos and for him, but it is what it is. The Patriots are the beneficiaries. And I think as much as a lot of Lions fans aren't going to like to hear this, I do think the Rams win it all. And I do think all talk that the Lions won the trade will have to cease, maybe forever. If the Rams get two of them things before the Lions get one, I know moving forward the Lions could get some, but man, that would be really, really rough for the city of Detroit if Stafford gets his second. But I think it's going to happen. I could be dead wrong, but that's what I think.
Well, it's ironic. It's just funny. It's funny to me that people, I bring up Howie Roseman a lot. And maybe I'm doing it incorrect. I need to start bringing up other GMs because Les Snead is someone I could very well bring up. It's the only reason why I bring up Les Snead, or excuse me, Howie Roseman, and I brought up Les Snead a lot, is you have to look at GMs that don't have Mahomes or Tom Brady. Like you have to look at GMs that have dealt with quarterbacks that are really good. How do they win? And if Les Snead can win another Super Bowl, which, by the way, I know he's been in the job. People always bring up the timeline. Like, I guys, I'm just trying to give Brad the path. I'm trying to compare and look at other teams. They won a Super Bowl with, Matthew Stafford when he first got there. If they win one this year, technically, Sam, it would be kind of not completely, but it would pretty much be in two different ways. They won it the first time going all in and being aggressive. Von Miller, Jalen Ramsey being aggressive. This one will be like a homegrown talent Super Bowl with Devontae, of course. But They have a lot of guys on that defense that are drafted, like players that are playing really well for them. So if you have a GM that's like Brad Holmes, like, hey, draft and develop. And then you have Les Snead, who it's like, yeah, we'll draft and develop and win one, but we'll also be all aggressive and win one. I mean, at some point, we got to start being like, yeah, coaching, defense matters. A GM that, hits on draft picks matters the last 2 years.
And Brad I know Holmes. We're in lockstep on this. The Lions don't have to have the best at everything all the time. I mean, they missed the playoffs for Pete's sake. Brad Holmes is not better than GMs who have, like Howie Roseman, like Brent Veach, like Les Snead. I think Jason Licht for the
Jason, I think Light or whatever his name.
Yeah,
the Buccaneers.
Buccaneers. John Lynch, even Brad Holmes just isn't at their level yet. We think that he could maybe get there, but I'll tell you what, little doubts starting to creep in my head after missing the playoffs. But yeah, absolutely. The Rams, what they've done to really rebuild their team through the draft has been, it's an all-time GMing, because this is you're right. Puka Nacua might be one of the best draft picks ever when it's all said and done. Kyron Williams, Jared Verse, that whole defensive line, even Blake Corum's been a really damn good backup, et cetera, et cetera. It's been incredible what the Rams have been able to do. And shoot, Matthew Stafford's playing the best ball of his career.
I'm sick.
I know.
I'm sick, Flannel. But you know what? I appreciate the hell of you, my friend. Great job today. You came on, you spit a bunch of facts. You're great. I enjoy talking to you, my friend. We'll catch you next week. You guys can check out Flannel as always at Flannel Sam. Does a lot of stuff here on Crunch Time Sports. Very valuable to what we do. We appreciate you, Sam. We'll talk to you soon, my friend.
Talk to you soon.
There you go. Flannel Sam joining the show and doing an excellent job. Today, no Booner. Holding it down without Boone. Feel better, Boone. You know, he's battling some sort of flu, but he'll be back tomorrow. And if he's not, it's okay. The guy works hard. He deserves to have some time off, all right, especially in his condition right now. He is battling. Appreciate the hell out of all you guys, man. You guys were great today. Just love having these just really super, interesting, sometimes controversial, maybe offensive to some conversations about the Detroit Lions. I think these are needed. I think, the offseason's about reflecting. It's about, analyzing what went wrong and how the Lions can bounce back this upcoming season. AG's Burner, appreciate you, bro. You guys hit the like button for me on the way out. It'd be much appreciated. You can get your merchandise, officialctsports.com. And go check out our content because we post daily, and follow us on social media for all updates for the Detroit Lions. But appreciate the hell out of you guys, man. The support has been amazing. And we will catch you tomorrow, 8 p.m. as usual. But until then, have a great night.